Welcome to Echoes of Silence. Today's conversation is personal for me because I have seen how many women quietly carry responsibility at work, at home, and within themselves. We often celebrate strength, but rarely talk about the weight behind it. Suchismita's journey sits at that intersection, caregiving in a personal life and leadership in corporate spaces, holding people, regulating systems, and managing expectations. And somewhere in all of that, trying not to disappear. This is not a conversation about success, it's not about advice, it's about what it feels like to hold everything together when you're expected to. Suchismita, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's always good to see you, Archana, and hope you're doing well.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. Before I start, I just wanted to understand that when we reflect on your caregiving journey, what is that something what people don't see, right? What is invisible?
Sure. Now, what happens in caregiving, a lot of that is shaped by our lived experiences. Let me give you an example, right? Our mothers, when we are growing up, were actually taking the role of a caregiver.
Right. Yes.
Now, if you look at our fathers, they were also doing the earning. Most of our families, if you look at traditional families, the mother was a homemaker. So that's where caregiving was a primary part of the role. Whereas the father was also playing the role of a caregiving, but more as a provider. Now, what happens is, what is invisible? You asked me the question about what is invisible in my role as a caregiver, is possibly the vulnerability and the fact there are so many dimensions that I don't know how to handle.
Right. Like so many things which people cannot see.
Yes.
Right? That is what we want to understand.
So, for example, people will not be able to see. I'll give you a simple example. Suppose a nanny or a nurse doesn't turn up one day for my daughter. And I have to necessarily go and do a presentation, or I have a meeting where I need to be present in office. Now, how do I handle those dilemmas is not something that is visible to people. And why is that so? Because most of the times, there is a possibility it can be seen as an excuse. There is a possibility it can be seen saying that it will condition people's mind to say next time if something like that happens, they're going to be conditioned to be able to say, will she be able to do it? Will she be able to take it further? So that's one invisible aspect of caregiving which is there for every working woman or every working man as well. Essentially anybody who's playing the role of a caregiver and at the same time have to necessarily look at financial independence, or you have to look at emotional interdependence with others. These are certain elements that you have to really, that you don't get to see. The other element of caregiving that is not visible is you're very lonely at the core, because you're fighting a process, you're fighting a cause, you're necessarily looking at a symptom in order to make sure that you want to make life healthier or easier for the other person. But in the whole process, what is happening is that you are not necessarily spending enough time to fill yourself up. So what the invisible part of caregiving is when you start depleting and you wouldn't even know till you break down. So those are two most important invisible parts of caregiving that
I think
others
this
will not
is
see.
most of the caregivers silently, quietly experiencing this. I
Yes,
right?
every day.
How do you stay strong for everyone?
And I think that's an important question, and possibly I will turn this in a different way.
Sure.
Most of the times, what caregivers, or essentially when you're talking about emotional resilience, the story becomes, how do I stay strong for others? Actually, the question that I have realized it actually keeps me strong is first to figure out what keeps me strong for myself. Because still I find that strength for myself, there is no way that I will become strong for the others. Because what I found is, every time I kept saying, no, I need to be strong for the others, the question then becomes saying, what is it that I'm compromising on myself? Because there's nobody to support me for that.
Right.
So as a result, what becomes important for me to stay strong for others is my consciousness or my self-awareness of what state of mind I am in. What is my emotional state? What is my physical, mental state? Because if I am not physically well, there's no way I will be able to stay strong for anybody else. So those are few things, Archana, I'm realizing, and I observe people more, right? The one thing that I'm realizing to stay strong for others, what becomes important is to focus on the small details that you would otherwise miss in others.
Right.
So those are the few things that I can think about.
Great, and thank you so much for being honest with that. Right. I also want to understand, Suchi, that with your experience with caregiving, has it influenced how you led corporate spaces?
Absolutely. And what has happened is it's actually two sides of the mirror. Now, when I'm looking at my role as a caregiver, what is also important is for me to protect that space from public scrutiny or from the public eye. Now, as a result of that, what has happened is that my boundaries of personal space and professional space are very clearly drawn out. And that is something in many ways very difficult for everybody else to understand. So for a simple thing like, okay, after office hours, if you have to go and meet a coffee, there's nothing wrong in that.
Correct.
But the question is, I may or may not, because I have something else to go back to. Now, every time being able to explain this to somebody else, it's not possible. And that's where this whole aspect of caregiving has taught me to own some of those boundaries as my reality. And as a result, not seek validation from others all the time. It has helped me to become more responsible in the way I actually build relationships with everybody else outside. It has made me more confident or conscious about the fact that I need to set certain expectations up front. And what has that helped is that in the whole process, I have got more support from the others. If I wouldn't have mentioned some of this, a lot of the things would have been taken for granted, or maybe people would have said, you should have just told us, right? So in the whole process, I think over the years, I have gained some incredible set of friends who I can depend on. So that's one element of it. The other aspect of caregiving has actually taught me to find voices for people who otherwise wouldn't speak. Because what happens is that, like I mentioned, Archana, all of us are caregivers in some form or the other. What becomes important is to be able to say what is the intensity that we are working through each day. And a simple aspect of caregiving is many a times not even spoken about, not even recognized. So as a result, what this has done is in the way I lead, wherever I observe some of these instances, it has made me speak about it, to give space to the people in order to really show up responsibly. And the last aspect, I think, I think I'm very aloof in many ways, right? And I respect people's story, but with a certain set of boundaries. So the way I lead, I think what it has done is that it has made me set very high standards, because I set those standards for myself. And as a result, what I've observed is that I invariably expect some of those standards from people.
Right.
So for example, and I'll give you a very simple example, right? Many times when people have coffee table conversations about small things that really perturb them, saying somebody has not come at home for housekeeping, right? Simple things, and then the whole thing is about, I cannot focus on my work, I cannot do this. Those are certain things, in many times, I actually take the ability to actually have conversations with people to say, why is it that's such a big thing which you're not able to handle? Because this can be just a small element of something else that is going to be thrown at you, which is of a much bigger intensity.
Right.
So this is the way possibly I lead, because of what caregiving has taught me, to observe for the things that otherwise would be overlooked.
I mean, thank you for, talking about this, because we rarely talk about the connection between work and home, right? It's not discussed everywhere.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes.
talking. And also believe, and it's interesting to see that how your personal resilience has shaped up your professional leadership.
Yes.
Because I have personally experienced that in terms of you being leader in various organizations,
Thank you.
right? Having said that, I just want to understand, so with this experience of your caregiving, you told that it has influenced your corporate style of leadership as well, right? So have you been more empathetic or you're guarded?
I think both.
Okay.
But I would lead with empathy. And I'll give you an example, right? And I will take two examples.
Okay.
One is, there was somebody in my team who actually went through a miscarriage. And what the person was hesitant about is not about coming back to work. The person was more hesitant staying at home. And that I found it very interesting to say, why would somebody want to come back? Because I was saying, take some time off because you are allowed the 3 weeks, whatever the policy allows and stuff. And she was like, no, Suchi, I want to get back to office. So I understood one element saying that, okay, it is going to be a distraction. I said, all right, so you come to office, but come to office first, let's talk. And so when we started talking, it's interesting to say, you know what she said is, Suchi, I don't want to stay at home because sometimes just the way my husband looks at me or my in-laws look at me, I feel very guilty of this entire story. Just imagine an event which is so painful, I'm sure for everybody, one person is carrying so much of weight of that instance.
Right.
And that's what I say, I lead with empathy to be able to understand this dimension. And then what is it that's going to happen? So suppose she starts working. What is the impact that it is going to happen on the other team members? What's the probability? Everybody will say, what was the hurry for her? Why is it that Suchi did not step in to allow her to stay at home?
Yes.
All of these dimensions exist. The question that you have to then see the boundaries or being aloof is to be able to say, what matters? Is it of importance what the others would possibly say, or is it important to necessarily take care of the girl in the way she wants to really look at herself of self-reliance, right? And the way she was looking at me is to be that support for her, which she possibly never is going to be able to acknowledge it anywhere. So as a result, I'm just taking that as an example, saying that all of this actually makes me lead with empathy, but very clearly with certain boundaries and knowing what to prioritize and who to prioritize. I think my need for validation from the external world is become minimal because of my caregiving experience.
Yes. Right. Well, as a woman, there's often this unexpected, or rather I could say unspoken expectation that, women hold everything together. It could be at home, at work, right? Has it ever doubled your pressure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'll tell you my personal story, right? And this is where I think having a supportive ecosystem is extremely important. So after, Sohana was born and we had to go through so many surgeries. We had gone to Bombay and then we had to come back. And at that time, we didn't have maternity leave for 6 months. It was like for 3 months. And I asked, saying, can I work from home? No work from home facility that time. So I had to leave everything. So now to answer your question, what happened was at the same time, it's important to have those conversations with the people who are close to you.
Right.
So I had conversations with Nishant and my in-laws, my parents, to be able to say, okay, what is it that we need to do at this point? Because financial situation was such that 2 people had to work because it was a lot of expenses to just take care of her. So to answer your question, I think what becomes important, and that's where you possibly take hard choices to say, who is it that you're going to let into your inner world? And how is it that you're going to possibly talk about expectations they have of the circumstance or situation first? And then what is it that they believe that you can contribute towards, rather than necessarily saying, this is what I want to do, and start with that. Because when you start with that, there is a high chance that the disappointments are also going to be higher because you don't know where the other side is. So is it an added pressure? Absolutely, yes. Because you are trying to actually, again, manage everything, but it is from your own head. So what I would encourage, and that is where I have found a lot of benefit, is to be able to really have conversations, ask, be vulnerable. And most of the times, be it a man or a woman, being vulnerable is extremely difficult, right? People say women, it's very easy to be vulnerable because they are high on the emotion. But actually, when it comes to for themselves, women are not. They would do everything else for the others, but they wouldn't necessarily do it for themselves, right? Even for men to be vulnerable in the places where they're hurting the most, it'll never come out. So as a result, to be able to really lead with ease in the situations of heightened expectation is to actually have honest conversations again with the people who matter and whose help you will need to be able to work through those dimensions.
I believe that it takes strength to acknowledge the pressure. I think,
Yes.
And also women who are listening to you will resonate with what you're telling right now, right? I also wanted to understand, now we're talking about home and work and holding everything together, right? Have you ever felt that guilt on either direction, maybe at home or work?
Okay, so let me possibly say that in the early years of my career, guilt, yes. But after 26 years in the industry and looking at so many dimensions, the answer is no.
Oh, okay.
Because, and I think it comes with age and experience. Beyond a point, you start becoming very, like I said, self-sufficient in some way. You learn to let go of things, like I said, it's like shedding your skin, right? So essentially things that are not important, it starts moving away from you. And that gives you that space and confidence to actually stay with what matters to you and keeps you grounded. So the question is now, is there a right and wrong about it? The answer is no. Right? And the way to actually deal with it is, okay, you feel guilty, so what? Ultimately, it's about answering that so what. Otherwise, you always stay in that sense of guilt, which is not helpful.
Right.
And as a result, again, I'll go back to the same thing. How you have conversations with yourself, how you have conversations with the others who matter, is going to be a lonely process and is a lonely process, Archana. You're not going to be the poster girl or the poster boy for this. And if your game is to really be the poster girl or the poster boy, it's going to be incredibly hard to work through that guilt. And the first is to acknowledge that, yes, I feel guilty.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, if I'm feeling guilty, what am I feeling guilty about? And that's where we say, shrink the starting point. Is a good strategy, a mental strategy to have when you're arriving at decision points to say, what do I do with that guilt? And most of the times, irrespective of whether it's a man or a woman, we just stay in that state of guilt. We don't do anything about it to resolve it. Yeah. So what happens when you stay in that state of mind, your brain is always working in that mode to say, okay, I'm doing this, I'm going to feel guilty. It doesn't help. Then every action becomes an action of guilt. Every thought becomes an action of, or a phenomenon of guilt, which is not helpful, which is not healthy. Because then you're going to take it out in some form or the other.
True. I mean, my instance, small thing, it may not be like the caregiving aspect of yours, but when I go back home, right, and my daughter, she makes me feel guilty because now she's grown up, right? She will talk and she'll ensure she knows my weak points. Like, I really feel guilty when I see that, I go back, I take back work home as well, right? But again, as you mentioned, I talk it out, right? I speak to my husband, I speak to my friends that this has happened. And then I also work around that. I make up to that, right? And then we have me and my daughter has a healthy conversation. I tell her about the job, how demanding it is, what it is, but I give time, right? Like as you mentioned rightly that you cannot carry that guilt. So for me, it's only for that instance, yes, you feel bad about it. You feel sorry, you shouldn't have done that. And you make up for that, right? So this is something what I wanted to share.
Absolutely. And what you said about sharing with your daughter. See, the other thing, especially for women, right? I think, and especially with daughters, it is also a question of role modeling.
Correct. Yeah.
So, and I think there are beautiful conversations that can happen with siblings, with your children, to say, 5 years down the line, what would matter to you?
Correct.
How would you like to see your mother? And I think what becomes, and that's a beautiful point that you mentioned, Archana. You see in your narrative, you are saying making up for it.
Yes.
That is a sign of guilt.
Yes.
And the whole point is, if we can shift that, there is no making up. It is necessarily a conscious choice that you're making because it's a trade-off. And at the end of the day, you are able to actually explain that trade-off to the people, maybe to your daughter. Today, she may not be able to understand it fully. But 5 years down the line, will she really value you for that conversation? Absolutely, yes. And that's where to work through the guilt. Taking those steps for conversations is the most important thing to shift that guilt to purposeful action and thoughts. Because without that, it is not a helpful state to be in.
Suchi, you've been in an organization working for various senior leadership roles, like, I know you've been a CHRO, you've been a vice president for HR, director for HR in various organizations, done multiple roles. Now, leadership often requires to regulate not only yourself but to regulate people, system, crisis also, right? So, how it's been for you to regulate yourself and regulate others as well?
And thank you for asking that, because I think that's the crux of leading. And most of the times, and what I'm realizing in my entrepreneurial role, right, when I look at coaching leaders, when I look at having conversations with leaders about what is it that they would want to see change in their organizations, most of the times the conversations is always external. Rarely have I heard leaders talk about saying, hey, in order for this change to happen in my organization, certain aspects of me need to change. So as a result, I think in order to lead others, the first is, like you beautifully said, is a self-awareness of who you are and what is your intention to lead. Because unless a leader is aware of himself or herself, saying, here is my motivation to lead, why am I leading this set of individuals? Why am I leading this organization? Let's say, for example, you have a CEO who's been hired to actually transform a legacy organization. Now, it's very glamorous to say, hey, you know what, I'm here to be able to turn around an organization. But the question is, the rest of the people who you are expecting to lead, where are they? Are you open enough for you to be able to say, is your intention to create that brand for yourself, to say, okay, I have been successful to lead, versus to say, I'm put in a situation to create value. And how you define the value in the way you are actually making a difference to the people who have been part of those organizations, and how do you walk their journey with them, becomes important to lead. Right. So the part that I'm talking about, you talked about self-awareness. So the self-awareness, if I look at it, if you can break it into 3 or 4 parts. Self-awareness about what is your motivation to do what you're doing. The second, what are the trade-offs you have committed yourself to? Because there will be trade-offs in leading.
Right.
And the more aware you are about the trade-offs that you're doing, it is going to keep you centered in your value system. Because unless you are leading through values as a leadership, people will not be able to respect you as an individual. There's this beautiful example, and it's very true. It's like, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman who actually said it, but they saying, when you are the CEO, there'll be 100 people coming to give you a cup of coffee. And you'll be possibly having the coffee in a Chinaware. The moment you leave that position, right? Essentially, you're back on your own feet. You have to stand on your 2 feet. And there, we do possibly have 100 people or 10 people. You will have nobody. You'll possibly have your own tumbler that you would buy with your own money. The question is, when you are aware of these variances which actually happen in real life, your ability to lead others, it comes from a place of empathy. And it comes from a place of where you are not in it to prove a point for yourself, but you are there in that position to say, how can you add value to a stakeholder like an investor? How can you add value to the team leaders who have possibly joined you because of a vision that they believe you're going to lead them through? So in order to lead others, that awareness becomes extremely important. The values anchoring becomes very important. And the most important part, what is it that you're not going to necessarily give up, becomes important. What is it that it's non-negotiable. Being clear about that becomes a very important aspect of self-awareness when you're leading others.
Okay. So I just want to understand, in your leadership position, were there moments where you felt really emotionally stretched?
Absolutely. And I don't want to make this a gender aspect, but most of the times when you are in senior leadership roles, as a gender, you're a minority, right? That's a reality.
Right.
So the question is, in there, you don't necessarily occupy the position, whether it's a male or a female, it really doesn't matter when you're actually working towards achieving that goal. At the same time, there are certain aspects of emotional expressions that come very easily to us as women. So for example, in my role, there have been certain situations where I have broken down in front of my business stakeholders who are 30 years of experience, all male, right? And at the end of the day, what I found, which is funny, is they didn't know how to deal with it.
Okay.
Right? And in situations like that, what becomes important is how do you necessarily quickly become comfortable with that situation and own that space and not feel guilty about it.
Right.
Because the moment you feel guilty about it, what will happen? That is what you're going to project outside, which is not a very healthy way to actually build strong stakeholder relationships. So have I been emotionally stretched? Absolutely. Have I necessarily broken down? Like I said, yes. There have been times where I have walked out of meetings without having spoken a word, and I'm not somebody who wouldn't necessarily speak something or not speak my mind. But that is possibly because I felt that if I speak, I think a lot of my anger would come out, and I actually made that choice to be able to stay away, saying that there will be another time, but I cannot have a situation where I actually burst out, because that is good. So absolutely.
So I see a emotional discipline in what you're describing, basically, right?
Yeah, that emotional regulation.
Right.
And it is okay to say, even at times you're not able to regulate yourself, to let go. It's fine, and not feel guilty saying, oh, this is what happened. So this example that I was sharing, where I actually broke down in front of, at that moment, I felt very bad. But I don't believe I have even gone to even any one of the stakeholders to actually talk about it after that event was done.
Okay. So you just moved on.
I moved on. And in my mind, the fact that I was able to move on is also a sign to the others to say, please move on.
Right.
It is a part of me being human. I broke down, maybe you would have screamed and shouted.
Right. Yes.
Right? So yes, emotional stress is there, emotional stretch is there. There have been times, so for example, I have cut people off. So suppose we were talking and I realized that this conversation, and the other person was screaming on the top of his voice. I actually took the liberty to say, thank you very much, we're not going to have the conversation now. And I cut the phone. Okay. Knowing fully well, and the person was higher in hierarchy than me, to say, what is the worst that can happen? The guy is going to say, please leave the job, so be it. Okay. I'm not going to take a situation where you're screaming and shouting, right? In spite of saying that, please don't do it. Please know that you're crossing the boundaries. Having that level of awareness of that emotional stress, and like you said, that emotional discipline of knowing what is acceptable for you and what is not acceptable. Men do it very well. As women, we find it very hard.
Right. So you need to have that strength too to talk about it.
Yes, and that clarity for yourself. What is it that is going to create that stress for you, and not let anybody come into that space.
True. Right. Okay. So since we're talking about the organization, we have employees working from different generations, like multi-generations, right?
Yes.
Now for them to understand the importance of mental well-being, understand the importance of emotional resilience, is there any platform we can create to thrive in that?
That's a very important question for us to actually discuss and ponder about, given that this is a time when organizations are facing the maximum flux across generational workforce. And the way we need to think about generational workforce is like dealing with different cultures.
Right.
Okay. So you still have some set of the baby boomers who are left at the very senior levels mostly. Mostly you'll find Gen X.
Yes.
Okay. And what is it that the Gen X values? The Gen X community, and I am part of that community. So for us, that stability, that resilience is something that we value, but emotional expression doesn't come very easily to this generation. Now, then comes the millennials. Millennials are the generation, for them, the expression is something, they're actually the first generation where they have started talking about emotions and the fact that well-being is important for us and all of that stuff, right? And then you have the Gen Zs and now the Alpha as well, right? Now, actually the Gen Alpha is the generation that is going to be the first generation that is going to be really fluent in the emotional language, because the language that they speak, they're very comfortable talking that language of emotions, right? Millennials are the one that started it. correct? Gen Zs are the ones who possibly are far more resilient. They may not talk about it, but they live the emotions far more than what, say, a millennial or a Gen Z is going to really look at. So the platform, if you're talking about, that platform exists in all organizations. Suppose if you're working in teams and you're interacting as a team, right? Your team meetings are a platform for you to work across generations in terms of the mental well-being. What becomes important is to listen in to emotions, the language, understand each other's language of emotions. So for example, nowadays I see this young kids, they use this short forms. Everybody is a bro this, bro that.
Right.
And like, so for example, when you're even talking about, and I listen to some of the conversations in the metro when I'm actually, and I travel a lot by metro in Bangalore to beat the traffic. So now what I find is they are easily able to talk about things or emotions and expressions which, say, when I think about it, I would be more resilient about, or maybe restrained to even talk about it with the other person. But what I see is that they don't have the ability to be able to regulate that very well, which a Gen X or or say for example a baby boomer, they're very good at it because they have necessarily built loyalty, stability, all of that.
Right.
They don't give in that easily. And the newer generation find it so difficult to deal with failures. For them to stay committed to one thing is not easy because there are so many distractions. And that's why I say platforms are there. So for example, when you're having lunch meetings, when you're actually going out for team outings, focus on actually knowing each other, listening without a bias. The other is staying curious. See, it's very easy to dismiss one generation and the other. Like children dismiss parents. Children will listen to somebody else, but they wouldn't necessarily lead. Why? Because familiarity, many times saying, okay, my parents don't necessarily. This is beautiful ad. I'm sorry, I'm shifting. Have you seen this ad of where they actually talk about a certain invention and they actually ask saying whether it's a male and a female? In people's mind, it's always the male and not the female. So some of these biases is not helpful from a mental well-being perspective. And the good news is the newer generations are far more open. They're far more emotionally literate. Now, what becomes important is the older generations like ours to be able to make them inclusive, to really include them in conversations, be curious about them and not dismiss them. Because they are also bringing something that possibly is being inherited. We cannot dismiss them because they are a part of us. So that becomes important. The other thing as a platform becomes important is to normalize these conversations.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. If somebody is saying, I'm having a bad day, don't just say, okay, fine, deal with it. But having that space to say, okay, can we have a 5 minutes conversation? And conversation is one way to normalize mental well-being. Because just because we didn't talk about it earlier doesn't mean that it did not exist. But other things were a priority. Your economic independence is important. You need to be economically stable. But as a result, all those things have become dormant. It doesn't mean that it did not exist. Because unless and until you talk about it, what will happen is there will be unhealthy coping mechanisms that is going to shape up.
Right.
And that is where multi-generational workforce can work together to be each other's support system. And it doesn't have to be big things. It has to be small truths. It's about seeing a small truth and then making sure that you are making the other person feel seen and heard. You are making sure you understand the boundaries of the other person and not necessarily step into those boundaries.
Right. I think this is a very profound conversation what you're having, right? Yes. Suchi, let's say that you're navigating between these roles of caregiver and leadership positions as well, right? Who were you beyond these roles?
Who were you or who am I even still?
Both the ways.
Both the ways?
Yes.
Okay. I grew up in a steel township, all right? And I'm still that township girl at heart.
Okay.
All right. What does that mean? If you still give me a bicycle and say, okay, go, I will comfortably ride the bicycle and then go up to Nandi Hills if required.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who's there with me or not. So in that way, I think I still am that free-spirited person, and I'm somebody who loves being a loner.
Okay.
Because it just gives me so much of space to just be myself.
Okay, so that's one part of me which is beyond my roles. The second aspect is I'm somebody who actually, I live minimally, Archana. For me, extravagance is not something that I associate with. So for me, everything is about saying, how can you necessarily stay in harmony with everything that's around you? So I'm a person who would necessarily, if I see a tap water flowing somewhere on the street, I will go and close that tap, because for me that's like you're wasting a resource, right? So those things about being able to care for things around me, and things, those are small things that would possibly be missed by others, and I do it because, not because of anything else, but because I feel at the end of the day, if you're in an ecosystem, you need to respect everything around that ecosystem. So that part of me is fierce, okay? And the third part of me that is still there is I'm a fiercely private person, extremely private person. So as a result, and I hold my relationships very dear. I'm not a person who would necessarily talk a lot about things that really matter to me. I would talk about things which require me in a role, but beyond that, I don't.
So do you feel you're somewhere you're disappearing in these responsibilities?
Not really. I think I'm finding myself in these responsibilities.
Okay.
And why am I saying that? I'm finding where can I actually add the maximum value, right? And I'll give you a very simple example. It's been 3.5 years as an entrepreneur, okay?
Right.
And what I earn as an entrepreneur is possibly not even close to half of what I left my corporate job at.
Yes.
Right? And it is not that even today there aren't conversations happening saying that, Suchi, here is an organization, here is an opportunity, why don't you go for it? And I'm not even once at this point in time it actually occurred. And a lot of people tell me saying that, Suchi, in the whole process you're losing opportunity to really prove your worth and your talent, all of it. But what I'm saying in my sense is, because what is important is for me to have a career that is in line with being able to take care of my daughter and my home at this point in time, because there's nobody else for her.
Right.
And at the same time, what I see is Nishant is doing very well, and he is actually spreading his wings, and I want him to be able to do that. Because what happens is, when you are in a partnership and you're in a relationship and in situations like this, what's important is to be able to share some of those. So am I really disappearing? No, but am I really trying to shape it in a different way that possibly matters to me? Absolutely yes. And one thing that I'm consciously do it every day is not to sleep with a regret.
Okay.
Saying these are choices I'm making. Yes, these are the trade-offs, but here is why I'm making them. Because that is something, as a person, it would be very difficult for me to reconcile a regret. Because I'm not a person who I don't want to live a life with regrets. I don't want to.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. And recently you have launched your memoir, right? Unscripted Grace. So I
Yes.
just want to touch upon that. And firstly, congratulations on
Thank you.
launching that memoir. So I was just wondering, now if you have to go back when you're writing, it's like you are revisiting those moments which will feel very emotionally heavy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So during this process, did you think about, what is the resilience you had? I know, what were the thoughts when you were writing about this, when you're writing the memo?
That's a very deeply personal question, and thank you for asking that, because like I said, I'm a fiercely private person, and I'm not somebody who ever shares my emotions with anybody. Now, the only reason I wrote this memoir, and this has been over years, where Swanna's doctors have been telling me, saying that, Suchi, what you guys are going through or what you are doing, it's not about being incredible. It's about saying somebody, there are people who possibly are facing life in many other dimensions in a similar way. And everybody possibly just needs to feel that their voice is heard, and possibly they believe that there is hope just to go on for one more day. So that was the only motivation for me to actually put down so much of these incidents or stories into the memoir. Has it been emotionally grueling? Absolutely yes, because I think what I had to take a call on what to leave out. Because what was important in the memoir is not about expressing everything that I was going through, but about being able to balance saying what aspects of what I put out is going to find resonance in somebody, and that person would be able to find hope to say, it's okay, I can go on. So, and how did I deal with it? One is whenever I used to, so I had my notes and everything, right? So when I was putting together this, there have been times when it used to be like just taking out images and all of that, it used to be so heavy. I used to just compartmentalize, I used to break that off and not look at it for the next 2-3 days.
Yeah, well, I think it takes courage, right?
Yeah,
To
so-
it's emotionally very difficult
Yes.
to go back, revisit those, and it takes courage. And I
Yes.
believe when you were writing, it also gave you clarity that you didn't expect. Maybe
Absolutely,
from your
and
experience.
it was cathartic in many ways to be able to put some of those expressions. And like I said, for me in the memoir, I have talked about, and I'll give you an example, right? In the professional world, I'm known as a workaholic, right? And even now, I can, like I said, right, I'm doing night shift for my daughter because I don't have nurses, and I work through the day, go back home, sleep for 2 hours, and then through the night I'm awake just to take care of Sohana. And I don't have, like I said, I don't do it with the spirit of saying, oh my God, my life is hell. But do I feel like that? Of course I do. I'm like, how much more can I go on, right? But at the end of the day, do I necessarily give permission for me to break down? The answer is yes. I've stopped proving to myself that I have it all together. And I'm the first person, and people who know me, very, very close friends, they know that I can be a mess. And the beautiful part is, they love that part of me. And because they love that part of me, it gives me the confidence that whenever I have those times, to be able to say, it's okay. If not anything else, those few people are going to be there for me.
Right.
Yeah, so as a result, I think writing that memoir has been cathartic in many ways. If it can actually give, like I said, hope to another family, another parent, another person, just to say, get up, because that's the only choice you have in life. Get up and move on.
Right. So personally, writing this memoir, did it feel like a release, or it kind of opened the wounds for you again, reopened the wounds for you?
It reopened the wounds, yes. So which is why, like I said, that what has happened is, I think my ability to deal with it has gotten better. And I think I've started owning it. So the moment, because I have gone through depression, Archana, for 3 years, I have been on medication. So which is why, because of my life and what I've gone through, I know the importance of emotional well-being and mental well-being. Because at the end of the day, life doesn't give you a choice. I didn't have the choice to be able to just sit there and then just wallow in self-pity. No. I had to get up, get going, take care of my daughter, take care of the family, work, because I needed the money, period. Because it needed so much of money just to keep Sohana alive at that time. So sometimes, like you said, yes, I think it was more about just saying it's okay. I think after writing that memoir, I have come to a point to say it's okay, right? Life is going to be okay. And why I named it as Unscripted Grace is because I have believed, and it is true in my life, there is a design bigger than you, and you are part of that design. And all you have is that moment to say, this is what you have been given, and you do it with the best of intentions. That's all you have in your control. And that's it. Do you have expectations of returns? Yes. But those are expectations. Will it be fulfilled? Nobody knows. But how do you deal with it on a daily basis is really what your game of life is. That's your mental game. So that's what my memoir has taught me.
All right, interesting. Again, I mean, I've told this several times. I think it takes courage, and you've done this, and congratulations on your memoir, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For the women who is listening today, maybe they are carrying something, maybe caring about caregiving, leadership, expectation. Is there something you want to tell them that they have to remember?
It may sound cliche, but here's what I would say. Saying you are not in it alone. Yes, that's one. Second, don't be apologetic to own the space that you believe you deserve. And that is not just in the personal space, it is in the professional space, everywhere, in the social space, everywhere. And the third thing I would say is give yourself permission to be imperfect. Not everything is about labeling, not everything should be about how you have thought about how things are going to turn out and how you should be perceived. Nobody cares beyond a point. So why is it that you wouldn't care about you? And don't feel guilty about things and there is nothing called a makeup. At the end of the day, it is choices, and don't feel guilty, and don't be apologetic for owning your space. That's what I would say.
Suchismita, thank you for talking about the parts that aren't always visible. If something in this conversation resonated with you, just sit with it. You don't have to fix it. And you don't have to carry it alone. This is Echoes of Silence.